Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Nightreign. Today we're taking a look and having a bit of a discussion about the state of the nightlords. They had to be designed in a very careful and specific way, where the spectacle was there, the enjoyment, the challenge, but if they go too far, then it's going to backfire and people are going to be very upset that they have all that time between the next single attempt. So for the fun of it, we're going to look at it in a tier list format, working our way up from the bottom to the top, starting with what I believe is the worst nightlord of them all in terms of enjoyment and mechanics and fun. It's Marius, aka Augur. Look, the design of this thing is really cool. It's quite literally a jellyfish that transforms throughout the course of the fight, throwing little jellyfish at you that explode, whipping water at you. It's swimming through the air. So artistically, I think it's cool. Conceptually, I think it's cool. Mechanically is where this one falls so flat. It's ultimately their gimmick fight. The idea is that there are many ways to get ranged attacks, whether that's a ranged projectile Ash of War or magic, incants, using a bow. You need to know that you're coming across this nightlord, and so you're going to need ranged attacks for the majority of it. For probably 90% or so of the fight, melee just isn't an option. And so if you go in there with just melee, you're going to have a miserable time. And I think it's fair to say that the majority of players went in there with melee, having no idea that that was going to be the requirement before they got there. You can still beat the thing in that context with the longest fight of your life, but it's kind of a nightmare. And so, even though I like this creature, I like the boss design, it definitely just was the most boring fight, because even when you do the right thing, even when you engage with the range mechanics, you're just throwing projectiles at it or just firing a bow off over and over and over for ages until it finally dies. The actual challenge of the fight, the double wave splash or the kind of torpedo dive forward that it does, the explosive jellyfish, it's all just kind of like move slightly and you're fine. And because Augur moves around so much, you're doing that anyway. So sadly, I think it's the worst nightlord in terms of fight mechanics and least interesting to fight. The best part is when you have that DPS check to interrupt it when it's putting everyone to sleep, when it's near the ground for once, or when it drops the 2 teardrop bombs that you can actually target and destroy, or, you know, iframe with an ultimate timing, or you could actually parry it with Executor's parry, which is super cool. That kind of thing is at least something. Above that in B tier, at the bottom of B tier in my opinion, is the double insects, Gnoster as I believe it's called. It's a giant scorpion and a giant moth that fights you at the same time. A duo fight, another gimmick. Have they done this one well? I would say yes, they've managed to do a good job at having 2 targets attack you at once and it not feel absolutely terrible, but at the same time, the mechanics of this are just such a step back from even something like Godskin Duo is more interesting mechanically, or the OGs, Ornstein and Smo. The main mechanic here is that you've got a melee scorpion and a ranged flying moth. Their weakness is fire, but that fire weakness only seems to actually work on the moth, occurring like a long-term dot like you poisoned it or rotted it or something. While you're fighting the scorpion then in its melee attacks, the moth drops these huge poisonous clouds on you that if it builds up to its full, it leaves you with this like parasite that you cannot physically remove unless a friend or ally knocks it off your back. Let's focus in on each monster here. We have the scorpion with its slam attacks and sort of AoE earthquake, and that's it. That's essentially the majority of its moveset. It might charge around a bit at times, it might go underground and charge at you, but it's a very simple moveset. The most interesting part is when it turns to rock and then you can't hurt it anymore, so you're forced to change to the moth around that doesn't come to the ground most of the time anyway. So just like Augur, you need ranged projectiles for the moth, but the moth itself, if you do have that, is super easy to deal with because it basically doesn't do anything. It just floats around, drops some of those poison clouds in an area you move out of. Maybe it drops some beams, fires some missiles that are slow moving, and that's it. It's not until they combine that things get at least a little bit more interesting, where now you're dealing with the scorpion and the moth at the same time. The scorpion becomes a lot more aggressive and mobile, and then you've got these magical beams that come down that will destroy you if you stand in them all over the fight. The 2 best parts of this fight for me are 1, the music, because it's absolutely fantastic, and 2, when it transitions into that sort of double up riding the scorpion moment. All this beautiful grass spreads around this kind of bland and boring sand arena that we fight in normally. So it's quite beautiful visually and musically, but mechanically quite tame. But as a duo fight, somehow I just don't find it that offensive, and I think that's a good thing. Okay, also in B tier then we have Gladius, the Firewolf, the Cerberus Wolf. What a cool concept. A triple-headed wolf that you deal with that has a sword on its back that's attached to a chain that it's going to flick around and whip at you at the same time, enhancing it with fire explosions and sweeps, or separating into 3 different units that roar and have their own sort of a combo moveset. Moving like wolves, doing that sidestep thing. It feels really cool. And to have this as your first boss, by the way, that everyone has to defeat to really unlock the game, I think it's just really good. Mechanically, it's not that engaging. Mechanically, it's not that challenging or varied. But something about it hits better than the other 2 we've talked about. And so I enjoyed it as the first target for sure. It's the first boss I also went back and beat solo, which was certainly a different challenge compared to in a group, when those triple wolves are all upon you and just pressuring you all at once. This one feels challenging, mechanically not that varied, but fair. And that's what a first boss should feel. I like the little details like, you know, the holy stagger that can occur and the debuff you can provide it. But it's the fact that the poise of the creature goes down when it splits into 3. So each individual wolf is a lot more vulnerable and exposed. So while you're dealing with a lot more attacks at once, you can actually dish out a lot more in that moment if you get the opportunity, which is great. You'll force it back into its triple form if you hit it enough, controlling the fight through your own combat. It feels like an uplifted, more interesting version of the OG wolf with a sword concept. Of course, that's Sif, and that holds a special place in my heart. So I just really like Gladius. Fantastic first boss, and you know, I would say that would fit into a Souls game really well as an early challenge, like the first challenging boss like Morgott was. But also in B tier, the last one for B tier, we have Adel, the jaw beast monster. Absolutely love this thing. The design and the mechanics of it, the way that that jaw splits and separates, the way that it corkscrews up into the air to slam down and then it's like flopping upside down, the special bite animation where the jaw goes so wide it's scary as hell that it can grab multiple people in one bite. Look, it's not the most mechanically interesting fight even then. A lot of just kind of AoEs, small combos, repetitive style of attacks. Even ones that are different attacks feel similar, right? But there's just something really endearing, much like Gladius, about this monster and its design. I just always enjoy fighting it, even if it's not the most challenging or mechanically interesting. At very least, it does get visually interesting with the spectacle of Phase 2, where it kind of turns on that gravity lightning magic. You got that big explosion you got to outrange, the lightning strikes that you got to dodge, the meteoric lines that explode you got to jump over or roll past, and the fact that it's uniquely weak to poison, and it's not like a debuff like it is for the rest of the monsters, but actually it causes it to vomit, so you're able to proc poison and instantly have it cleansed by the boss to stun it for like 8 seconds, and then you can do it again super quick. I think it's a very big compliment to say that I think the design of this is fantastic and the moveset is fun to just engage with. The challenge isn't necessarily there, and the variety of the moveset definitely isn't, but I do like this boss quite a lot, and that's why I have it at the top of B tier. But now we come to A tier, where you actually have mechanics in a fight that suddenly feel challenging and engaging a little bit more than the basic. So we start with the Centaur, Fulghor, who is definitely one of the more challenging fights of the game right now, with his ridiculous cleave combo where he sort of slams the sand at you. That can one-shot you if you're playing something like Eye or Revenant or one of the lower health characters. It's the fact that his weakness, the lightning proc, yeah, it's satisfying and an important interruption, but it's actually one of the shortest stuns of the weaknesses. So you don't get a ton of value out of it beyond the debuff, which does make him take a bit more damage and deal a bit less, and that is important. But I quite like the way that it engages with the weakness system, but doesn't give you like a free win. It's not super good, which means you can have an offhand with lightning and then proc that stun and then get back to your main weapon, which feels really nice. I like that with this one, we don't have just a constant AoE earthquake on every damn attack, but instead we have mechanics like charging up the spear and then he slams it into the ground and then the spear spawns under every player no matter where they are, and it's up to them to dodge that. The ridiculous charging around, which has him outranging, which is annoying, but then he comes back in pretty quick and then you got that big explosion after. He has a fair few melee combos that hold him in place if the player can try to roll around him and stay behind him. A leap slam, or his second phase when he just pulls out a second arm and does everything he's already been doing, but with greater range and a bit more to it. Now you're spreading this kind of poisonous goop as he swings his arm, giving a bigger cleave to be aware of if you're not even the person with aggro. Nothing about this fight, to me, feels BS or unfair. He just deals a lot of damage, has some relevant combos, can do a variety of things that are actually engaging and slightly more difficult. This is the first boss on this list so far that I can say that about. And so I would say this would be like a midway through a Souls game level of boss. Maybe at best, but still, it's something. So yeah, I'm quite fond of Fulghor, but I'm also quite fond of Caligo, the giant ice dragon. It definitely has a massive health pool compared to some of these bosses, which is a problem, but its weakness of fire is a reliable one. As soon as you get that fire proc, you've got the debuff, it's much easier to deal with that bigger health bar. You can also bring things like rot, poison, or say bleed to deal with that longer DPS window, and that works well. In my opinion, before you get towards like the final boss of the best bosses, this has just got the most mechanics out of all of them. You've got like a tail slam or sweep, but you can, towards the end of the fight, see that he drops ice bombs and then he explodes them with that tail slam. So it's one attack with 3 different versions. Amazing. You've got the ice breath in front of him. You've got the sweeping ice breath where you run past the head. You've got the wing kind of like harnessing of the ice, and then he sort of pushes it forward in a big wide corridor of ice. Again, 3 versions of the same attack. If you stay under him too long where it's safe for a big dragon, he'll spawn ice under himself by breathing that ice under himself. All of his different ice attacks using that breath leave behind these ice shards like mines that you don't want to stand in for the ice buildup. There's almost no kind of annoying, yeah, I did an attack and so there was an AoE all around me, everyone has to deal with it. It's an attack that everyone just deals with because he's a big enemy and that's a big sweep. The spectacle of this fight is amazing as well. You got 3 moves that come to mind, whether it's the triple drive-by missiles where he flies into the air and he's doing this like missile machine gun shot, which has insane distance on it. There's no outranging it. You have to dodge to the side. It'll fly by, come by, do it again, and then come slam down and do it from the ground. Or obviously the really cool stuff where you got to listen and pay attention. You see where the winds are being sucked in and you run over and hide behind a pillar before the explosion. Or say when he flies off and you hear the ice tinkling. That's your tell to get over there or run the hell away as he generates this massive ceiling of ice that he drops around himself. This feels like an iconic big dragon fight where the mechanics are engaging and enjoyable. Compared to say the ancient dragons and such that we even fight in Nightreign, by the way, as mini bosses or night bosses, they suck. This is fantastic by comparison. If they tweak the aggression and how quick these combos come out and how maybe more moveset in general, this would fit perfectly into a proper Souls game towards the end of the game, maybe as an optional boss, which is a big compliment. So who stands above those two? Well, it's the last 2 that we want to talk about. Let's start with the final boss because obviously he's one of the best bosses in the game. It's quite interesting. Gnoster is a weird one. He could easily fill that role of like, you know, the Lord of Cinder-esque final base game boss, but obviously it needs to be tuned up for the 1v1 that would be. So you got the cinematic vibe, this humanoid form, and then they just didn't commit fully. Like a lot of his moves have that visual tell or feeling that you're about to have this insane combo that's never going to end. You have to roll 5 times or maybe land a parry to stop this ridiculous combo. Say that insane fly into the air, cut the world, change your element or status based on whatever it is. Like it could be ice, magic, fire, it could be madness build up. And the color matches that, super cool. But then all that happens in that transition is basically an explosion and lines on the ground that you just roll when he lands. Or say there's that moment when he does this magical bubble and all these missiles are flying towards you. And you're like, okay, what's happening here? Is he going to drain my life? Am I about to get hit by one of these? And it slows me. Each one that hits me slows me more and more. And then he turns and does a crazy combo that I can't dodge because I've had all my stamina sapped. No, they're just missiles that do a little bit of damage. That's it. So like he's one of the coolest bosses visually, undeniably, but he definitely does feel like it's like they didn't go far enough with it. Mechanically, combo wise and all that. Still, his design is so cool and satisfying. Still, he's one of the hardest things in the game right now. I like the way that he's got 3 arms so he can dead angle you, and if you're attacking him from behind, say, you know, in the trio situation, you can get hit and you have to pay attention to it. He's also one of the most satisfying enemies to parry or actually deflect and counter with his executor. He's a fight that I enjoy every time, and he's one of the more mechanically demanding fights, few of which exist in this game. If you were to put him in a Souls game, he'd definitely need that tune-up. Like his combos would need a lot more length to them, maybe more damage. Just more challenge, obviously, in the mechanics. If this wasn't in Nightreign, they would have gone harder on those. But for a final fight in the last nightlord that you challenge for the story, I think he's pretty fantastic. But who am I putting up there with Gnoster? Well, of course it's Libra, the actual literal goat, the madness monster. But not just madness, it's faith. It's a really cool combination of this clearly madness designed goat that keeps itself sane through its own holy power. Like throughout the fight, he's kind of shirking off these little faith bubbles that if you go pick up, it restores and cleanses a little bit of madness. So that's how he's keeping himself sane. In fact, one of the mechanics goes into that concept where he's actually meditating in a holy bubble to like keep himself going and power himself up. You can shatter that bubble through breaking his poise or breaking the seals, and then he goes nuts. He sort of stops using all his faith and leans heavily into madness now, doing his big AoE slams, ripping it from underneath him or above him, just going nuts and generating a ton of madness around him, which will insta-kill you if you don't run around picking up all those motes to keep yourself sane. Or if you actually let him meditate and finish that, he improves his holy aspect. So his seals that were firing out on a machine gun in front of them begin to spin. He drops those motes of madness above him a lot more aggressively. Those circles that explode under you, there's more of them. The whole pace of the fight goes up and up and up. So you can engage with the mechanics and keep things simple, but have to deal with more madness. Or you can try to avoid the madness and deal with way more mechanics being thrown at you at once. One of the most complicated fights by far, but also one that lets you engage with how much you want to deal with in what way. Also, the music fits an insane goat attacking you with madness and holy at the same time unbelievably well. Brilliant sound design. And the design of the goat itself, with all the eyes up the neck and the head and the giant eyes between the horns, man, it's just perfect. One of the coolest creations that they've ever put into a Souls game. I would love to see him in a proper Souls game. And they engage with it in fun ways in the open world where, you know, you can have the deal with him where you get a pro and a con at the same time, just like before the fight. So I think he really steals the show. Like, yeah, he's not the final climactic fight, but he stands easily in competition with that, or even potentially above it. So there it is, that's my list and the ordering of it. Overall, I think our top 4 would work well in a Souls game with that slight tuning. Libra with the least, probably. The main thing is that they just need more movesets and mechanics, because they've kept them all simple because of those key details, right? The fact that they're meant to be Forza 3-man, so they lean more into AoE and cleaves than normal. But more important than that, you have that average of 40-ish minutes between each attempt, compared to a Souls game where, you know, you got a short run back. If you fail, the time cost is massive in Nightreign. And I think that has a major role in how mechanical these fights are and why they're quite simple compared to your usual favorites of the Soulsborne series. But again, I do think they stuck the landing of this concept pretty well, providing us with a satisfying climactic fight at the end of that long run. Challenging enough, but doable. They did a good job with this across the whole roster, and I find it very enjoyable for those initial few kills. All of them even. But the long-term replayability of these bosses, when you really focus in on them, isn't nearly as good as a proper endgame Souls boss at the same time. So it's a tough balance to meet. But for the majority of them, I'm pretty damn happy. So what do you think? How would you order it yourself? Would there be any changes to this? Let us know in the comments down below. But until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.